As you know, we've had a lot of interesting events this year. It hasn't been short of cyber incidents. From AT&T announcing their breach to Change Healthcare, there's been a lot of significant cyber attacks this year. Now, one of the things that I would say is a theme in almost most of these breaches is identity, right? Because if you have the key to the house, you just walk in. Doesn't matter how formidable the door is. It doesn't matter how formidable the lock is. If you have a key, you walk in. So today you will hear about a lot of topics. You hear about AI. You hear about web attacks. You hear about how to respond to a breach. You hear about all these topics. I want you to sprinkle something on everything you hear today, and that is multi-factor authentication. So anything you hear, sprinkle a little bit of MFA on it, right? Because you know what? With that, you make it very difficult for the bad guys to take over. So for every topic you hear, whether your kids are signing up for their TikToks or, they're doing their Instagram, always remember to sprinkle a little bit of MFA on it, and it will be all right. So we're going to go ahead and get the show on the road. Please allow me to have this pleasure to welcome our CIO, our Cabinet Secretary for Technology for the state of Delaware, Gregory Lane, to come up and talk to us a little bit about our day. Please welcome CIO Lane.
Good morning. Thanks, Solomon. Morning, everyone. As Solomon said, I'm CIO Greg Lane. It's my honor to join you this morning here at Secure Delaware. We appreciate all of you being here today and recognizing the importance of cybersecurity. I think you being here shows that what we need is active engagement on cybersecurity. As Solomon said, we're attacked a lot by the bad guys, and active engagement is really critical. So we thank you. And as you are all aware, no one is immune to cybersecurity attacks. In fact, Zscaler's annual phishing report found that phishing attacks increased last year by nearly 60%. And the Veeam ransomware trend report found that on average, ransom victims permanently lost 43% of data affected by an attack. So no one's immune. And this year alone, here in Delaware, we've seen cybersecurity events impact healthcare operations as well as our libraries. The bottom line is no one is safe. Seems like it's not a matter of if, but when we are impacted by an attack. So I think it's also important that we have preparedness, that we execute drills, simulations, so that if we are hit, we are ready to respond and remediate. Governor Carney prioritized cybersecurity in his administration, investing in things like multi-factor authentication, identity lifecycle management, remote access, training, and many other valuable resources. And in this election year, I'm sure you're all aware, we look forward to working with the new administration on continuing this critical work. It goes without saying that we look forward to a great day here. So on behalf of the Department of Technology and Information, I want to thank all of our sponsors, vendors, our planning committee. Many of the planning committee are probably out and about and are not in here to say thank you, but as Solomon mentioned, we had people who retired, and this event is important enough to them that they came back to make sure we all had a very, very successful day. I want to thank the DTI staff and volunteers, and I don't think we do it enough. Just want to take a moment to give a round of applause to Solomon. Solomon and his team go the extra mile every year to put on this extraordinary event and make sure we have the day that we plan to have. We simply couldn't do it without your support, the hard work that everyone puts in every year, and it is greatly appreciated. I know many of us are looking forward to the great workshops offered and the Best of Secure Delaware contest, so active engagement is important. I hope you have an amazing day, learn a lot that you can use, as Solomon said, sprinkle as you go along, and most importantly, let's have fun. So it's now my pleasure to introduce the next speaker to you. It's a friend, no stranger to the state of Delaware, Chris Ramos. Chris serves now as the Cybersecurity State Coordinator for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. To support CISA's mission of reducing risks to the U.S. critical infrastructure, Mr. Ramos works with public and private sector critical infrastructure owners and operators to strengthen their cybersecurity, reliability, and resilience. Without further ado, we'd like to welcome Chris Ramos to the stage to give us some comments.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hi, here you go. Hi, good morning, everybody. I would like to first definitely thank CIO Greg, because we go on first name basis, and CIO Solomon for the opportunity to be here today and for organizing this event, because this event is a great opportunity for, everybody to share and learn new ideas, definitely reconnect with old friends, and I see some familiar faces, by the way. Yep, I see some smiles over there. Yes, and hopefully, by the end of the day, we have more friends than when we started, correct? Well, let's go. My goal today is to provide you an overview of CISA. I understand if not everybody is familiar with CISA, so, and how we can work together. Let's see if this works. There you go. CISA is America's cyber defense agency, and whose vision is for a secure and resilient infrastructure for the American people. So that means things like access to clean wastewater treatment, safe and secure transportation systems, or reliable and resilient healthcare infrastructure. CISA has 10 regions across the country. All right? We serve all 56 states and territories. It's the same grouping as FEMA, so Delaware, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and DC make up Region 3. Our regional office is in Philly. So a lot of mention of critical infrastructure. So there are actually 16 critical infrastructure sectors, and chances are you have touched at least 5 of them from the time you got out of bed this morning, and we're going to test that out. Anyone switch on any lights this morning? If so, raise your hand. All right, there you go, energy sector. All right, good participation, everybody's awake. All right, did you wash your face, use the bathroom, take a shower, flush the toilet? All right, see some hands there? Water and wastewater sector, that's 2. All right, let's try this again. Have you had something to eat? Come on. All right, even more hands. All right, that's food and agriculture, right? All right, move on. Did you check your email, send messages? I see somebody doing it right now. All right, so that's communications and information technology sector. All right, did you drive, take a train, fly your jet to come here today? Perfect. All right, that's transportation sector. All right, so if any of those sectors were incapacitated or destroyed, it would have a debilitating effect on security, national economic security, national public health and safety, or any combination thereof. Hence, the need to strengthen and maintain secure, functioning, and resilient critical infrastructure. Well, like he said, right, it won't be complete without October is a Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and one of them is turn on MFA. Right? 99.9% less likely to get hacked. I did my part. Sprinkle some MFA. There you go. All right. Other things, to remember: use strong passwords, update your software, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. We know what that means, and then recognize and report phishing. All right. Let's move on. All right. CISA resources. So CISA offers a range of voluntary and no-cost cybersecurity services, some of which, only some, I will cover today. CISA has other initiatives and campaigns like Shields Ready, Shields Up, and Secure by Design. I'm happy to chat about them between break sessions. In fact, our resident expert on Secure by Design is in attendance today. If you're curious about that, there you go. There's Kirk over there. See us between break sessions, and we would love to chat with you about Secure by Design. You can also reach out to me for the extended version of these presentations. So if you think 15 minutes is not enough, we can make that 2 hours. We'll figure that out. All right, there you go. All organizations should take certain foundational measures to implement a strong cybersecurity program. You can start with these top three services we offer. First, connect with your regional cybersecurity advisor. Who's that? Me. All right, check. That's easy enough, one off the list. That's my number, and that's my email address, okay? Next is sign up for our cyber hygiene services. So we have the vulnerability scanning and web application scanning. And some of you here actually are signed up to that already. So for vulnerability scanning, this service continuously monitors and assesses internet accessible networks assets to evaluate host and vulnerability status. For web application scanning, as the name suggests, this service deep dives into publicly accessible web applications to uncover vulnerabilities and misconfigurations that attackers actually could exploit. Third, all right, this is somewhat of an assessment. Undergo the Cybersecurity Performance Goals Assessment. The CPGs are a subset of cybersecurity practices aimed at meaningfully reducing risks. CPGs is a solid starting place to help identify actionable and cost-effective ways towards a more secure cybersecurity posture. So the original cybersecurity performance goals applies to all 16 critical infrastructure sectors, right? It's a baseline. Now, we are proud to announce that the first few sets of sector-specific performance goals are now available for chemical sector, if you're in the chemical sector, if you're on the energy sector and healthcare sector, we now have specific performance goals just for those sectors. And in the next few months, we're going to have information technology and financial services sector as well, all right? So the cross-sector will never go away. We just will go into more specific performance goals. All right. Tabletop exercises is a great way to identify areas of improvement in plans and procedures and help participants work together effectively in a low-stress environment. Some of you probably conduct this once a year. Now, probably the most stressful part of a tabletop exercise is coming up with the threat scenarios and developing the situation manual. Well, enter CISA tabletop exercise packages. The CTEPs are a comprehensive set of resources designed to assist in conducting your own exercises. Each package is customizable and includes template exercise objectives, scenarios, and discussion questions, as well as a collection of references and resources. Okay? Available scenarios cover a broad array of physical security, cybersecurity topics such as ransomware, natural disasters, insider threats, active assailants, and many more. There's almost about close to 100 scenarios readily available for you. If you need a tabletop exercise facilitator, well, please don't hesitate to reach out. We might be able to help you out with that. For the nerdy people in the room, all right, managers, administrators in the room, here are some tools you might find useful. First, the Cybersecurity Evaluation Tool, or CSET. It provides a systematic, disciplined, and repeatable approach for evaluating your security posture using many recognized government and industry standards and recommendations. There are about 60 assessments that comes out of the box. Of course, the cybersecurity performance goals is in there. We also have ransomware readiness assessment. Even HIPAA security rule assessment is in there. Even PCI DSS, for those who know about it, is actually there as well. Second, Malcolm is a powerful, easy deployable network traffic analysis tool suite for full packet capture, artifacts, SIG locks, and Suricata alerts. For those in the OT, you're probably familiar with that. Now, third, Logging Made Easy is a no-cost log management solution. It offers centralized logging, proactive threat detection, enhanced security by allowing organizations to monitor their network, identify users, and actively analyze sysmin data to quickly identify potential malicious activity. These are all free tools that CISA is maintaining and available on our website. CISA asks every organization and entity that experiences a cyber incident to report it to CISA. Reporting cyber incidents to CISA benefits all of us across government and industry, since cyber incidents have the potential to impact the economy, public health, and our national security. It also helps to inform our collective understanding of the national cyber threat landscape. So to report an incident, please visit CISA/report. Option number 2 is to call our central number. Option 3 is give me a call, right? There's always that number. All right, getting ahead of the ransomware epidemic. Ransomware has disrupted critical services, businesses, and communities worldwide, and many of these incidents are perpetrated by ransomware actors using known vulnerabilities. However, most organizations may not be aware of the existence of these vulnerabilities in the network. Enter CISA entity notifications. All right, what is this about? Our primary goal at CISA is to expeditiously give organizations information that could help prevent a cyber attack or reduce harm when intrusion is in progress. The difference between the two programs is that in RVWP, or the Ransomware Vulnerability Warning Pilot, it's a mouthful, I know, deals with the existence of known vulnerabilities, while a PRNI, in PRNI, or the Pre-Ransomware Notification Initiative, threat actors already gained initial access but hasn't yet exfiltrated data or encrypted your data. In short, with these programs, if CISA sees or hears something, we say something. Tiny problem though. We may not have a point of contact in your organization. Your organization may not even know who we are, right? So when we call, guess what? Folks don't want to talk to us. They hang up because they think it's social engineering. Great job with cybersecurity awareness, right? Good job. I mean, I love it. Now, big takeaways. Be aware that these programs exist. It's almost likely that I will be making the call, I will be doing the notification, so please save my number, all right? You can see me after and we can exchange contacts. That way we establish something. Or better yet, please subscribe or enroll in our cyber hygiene services. Lastly, if someone claims to be from CISA, well, give me a call. I might have to have coffee with him or her, or our central office to validate the caller. All right, there you go. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day. Thank you, Solomon.
Exceptional time, sir. We got a little certificate for you.
Thank you, Solomon. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You thought we were going to give you only free sanitizers, right? We have free services. We have free scanners, vulnerability management, ransomware. Mr. Ramos is the man, and he will hook you up. I blocked his number, so I will unblock it today. We can talk. We can talk after this. And remember, sprinkle a little MFA on that, and all your services will continue to be secure. So next up, we will have Mr. Gregory Crabb join us. Mr. Gregory Crabb is a formidable member of our cybersecurity community. He'll be a prominent figure in cybersecurity, known for his deep expertise and strategic approach in fortifying institutions against advanced cyber threats. We were just talking earlier with a member of my team, Karen, and they've been to Prague together. They've been to Interpol together, so they have deep contacts in the world of cyber and security. And we're really excited to have him join us today. So, Mr. Crabb, I'll let you proceed.
Thank you so much, Solomon. Good morning, everyone. And Chris, I just want to make a shout out to you. Great information that you provided. And as way of background, as Solomon mentioned, my name's Greg Crabb, and I was a federal law enforcement officer for 25 years with an organization called the U.S. Postal Inspection Service. The Postal Inspection Service investigates mail fraud, mail theft, bombs in the mail, and my specialty was cybercrime. The last 6 years of my federal career, I was the Chief Information Security Officer for the U.S. Postal Service, and about 4 years ago, I was very heavily focused on the 2020 election. As you may recall, we were in the middle of COVID, and you can imagine that mail-in ballots was a very important piece of the election process, and so I had a team that was actually working with Chris Krebs at CISA, and we were monitoring 24/7 the networks of the Postal Service to assure that all the 70 million ballots that were placed via the mail were securely delivered. And yes, it was a very safe election. So Solomon and the team at DTI and my friend Karen Trimmer asked if I could provide some background on what is necessary in order to identify, respond to, and mitigate a cyber attack, as well as how do you collaborate with law enforcement. And I'm really excited to be able to share with you these lessons that I've learned over the years. And I'd like to start bringing together the consumer side of cyber. How many of you have tried to sell something on the internet and receive, maybe via Craigslist or eBay or else, and somebody responded and said, hey, I'm going to send you a check or a money order for more than the amount, and I need you to wire the rest back to you. Have anybody ever heard of that scheme? Yeah, I think anybody that's tried to sell something on the internet has had that happen. So in 2006, this was January of 2006, I had the occasion of going to Lagos, Nigeria, and working with the Nigerian Economic and Financial Crime Commission. And my goal was to find the prince. Remember all those email messages, right? And so at the time, 2006, U.S. law enforcement was pretty leery of working with Nigerian law enforcement. However, I found the situation to be much different than the lore. Nigerian law enforcement at the time had been considered to be corrupt. We couldn't trust them. But I believed that we would be able to work with these law enforcement officers. So I brought a packet of information of victims from across the United States that had fallen for those schemes that you raised your hand about. They had attempted to sell something online and received a check or a money order and had wired proceeds back to the suspects in Nigeria. So I showed up, it was Martin Luther King Day, 2006, and we met with two law enforcement officers from the Nigerian Economic and Financial Crime Commission. And we presented them information about a subject, Peter Ian Nosa. And at the time, they were referred to as the Yahoo Boys. because most of the criminals out of West Africa, I should say it was Nigeria, because I had the occasion to work in Ghana and other countries in West Africa, and this was always a Nigerian perpetrated scheme. And so the Yahoo boys would operate from cyber cafes, and in this particular situation, this Peter Ian Nosa, he actually owned a cyber cafe in Lagos, and the Nigerian Financial Crime Commission actually knew of Peter. I was very surprised. We had millions of dollars worth of financial losses attributable to his activities, and they acted immediately. By Wednesday of that week, they had conducted a search warrant on his cyber cafe and arrested Peter. And I knew that they had arrested the right guy because my undercover in the United States was online with the subject, talking about these schemes and how he was going to purchase more counterfeit instruments in order to be able to perpetrate the schemes when the arrest went down. There were shots fired, and fortunately they left me at the U.S. Embassy when this all went down. And as a result of the arrest, they brought me the computer equipment. And the Nigerian Economic and Financial Crime Commission at the time didn't have the capability to do computer forensics, so I imaged the hard drive of the suspect, and the fella, Peter Ian Nosa, was in jail for 6 years. It was May of 2012 when I went back to testify in Nigerian court. And I wouldn't wish time in Nigerian jail on my worst enemy. The conditions in Nigerian jails are very rough. His family actually had to come and feed him every day. And Peter Ian Nosa, I got the opportunity to testify. It was a very interesting experience. The local college had heard that I was coming to testify, and the courtroom was packed with students. It was pretty amazing. And they warned me that when I testified, to Chris's point, we think electricity is, just a commonplace. They said, the electricity will go out while you're on the stand. And you just sit and wait, and because you can't continue because they're recording the session. And sure enough, I was on the stand, the power went out, and we sat there for like 10 minutes waiting for the power to come back on, and it was hot. And everybody was sweating. But Peter Ian Nosa ended up getting 7 years in jail in Nigeria for committing these crimes. So I want to we talked about, Greg Lane talked about how, we need to understand the threat. And I think it's really important for us as practitioners to understand these subjects that are responsible for perpetrating schemes. And I'll talk a little bit more about recent warnings from the FBI and what we need to understand relative to the FBI. I'll talk about the pitfalls in cyber response. So sometimes organizations don't see the indicators, and Chris warned of this. And I want to talk about when you don't recognize the warning indicators, what can happen as a result of poor response. And then we'll talk about preparing for an attack, as well as the importance of leadership through an attack. How should you leverage incident response, ICS, incident command structure, in order to be able to lead your organization through a proper response? Then we'll talk about post-attack recovery and the need for continuous improvement. I really am very passionate right now around insider threat. And I have a recent story from an engagement that I had with a client where insiders present a huge challenge that I don't think as cybersecurity practitioners we're thinking enough about. So Chris's colleagues at the FBI are very passionate about the attacks and the activities of the Chinese government. I became the Chief Information Security Officer, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, at the U.S. Postal Service following a nation-state attack by the Chinese government. It was the same attacker and motive as the OPM breach of several years ago. I led the investigative response to that for the U.S. Postal Service and ultimately became their Chief Information Security Officer. But I think we really need to focus on the words that Chris Wray provided some months ago. China represents an existential threat to the United States. We need to recognize that they have a 50-to-1 advantage over the government resources that the U.S. has in order to defend cyber. And just like Greg and Chris said, we need to familiarize ourselves with these specific threats. We need to create tailored plans, and Chris gave you tailored plans if you leverage his resources, and walk through those with tabletop exercises. And most importantly, we need to understand our crown jewels. What are these adversaries after, and how can they impact them? I think the recent FBI warning that came out over the weekend about the attacks against the telecommunications infrastructure in the United States are an excellent example of how the Chinese government is targeting U.S. critical infrastructure. And when the lights go out or when the telecommunication systems go down, we need to have contingency plans. Your businesses need to have contingency plans on how to operate. I call it threat-informed defense, and my partner and I run a small consultancy, both former U.S. government law enforcement officials have used the intelligence cycle that's leveraged by the U.S. government to come up with 6 steps. And that's understanding these threats, understanding how these threat actors operate, defining what the intelligence you need from an organizational perspective in order to be able to protect your business. Just like Chris Wray said, we need to prioritize our assets. What's most important for your business? Sensitive information, operational technologies, and then you need to have an ability to collect and analyze that information. CISA does an excellent job in collaboration with the FBI and the intelligence community to post warnings out to the community. Those warnings are a great resource in order to be able to stay up on what's most important. And then you as leaders in your organizations need to understand how to take that information and communicate it to decision makers so that you can respond appropriately. And we always have to be constantly improving this cycle because our adversaries are always changing. And I think one of the things that's most important, and I think we spend too much time focused on the word security and not enough time on the word resilience. And I believe that resilience is the objective and not necessarily security. And I've been a security professional for 25 years, or over 25 years now. I believe that we should be striving for resilience in our organizations because attacks are going to happen and we need to be able to recover. So, I was an investigator in San Francisco and developed great relationships with the credit card processors and associations. They used to be nonprofit organizations. Now Visa and MasterCard are for-profit entities, and developed a lot of relationships around the world. I was sitting at my desk and received a call from a source that I had developed in Cyprus. He said, "Greg, we have a problem. Cyprus is a small island country in the middle of the Mediterranean. Eastern European organized crime loves to vacation in Cyprus." And he said, the police has recovered some information. I need to send this to you. And 2 minutes later, I get the network schema for a victim company in the United States. This was a major hotel chain. There's a possibility that I'll stay at one of their properties this evening. And it was all of the routing infrastructure of how credit card transactions processed through that hotel chain. And I said, all right, I'll be on the next flight to Cyprus. And so it's a day and a half to get to Cyprus and meet the law enforcement at the plane, and they say, "Hey, Greg, we've recovered this computer from the suspect. Can you do the forensics?" This was about 2004. At the time, the Cypriot National Police, the Cypriot government, did not recognize computer forensic evidence as a form of evidence that could be introduced into court. And so I brought my computer forensic equipment, hooked it up, and basically found a detailed account of how the subjects leveraged a vulnerability in a computer network. They targeted the administrator with a phishing email. At the time, they didn't sprinkle a little MFA. MFA didn't exist back then, but if they would have sprinkled a little MFA, that might have helped a lot. But they leveraged known vulnerabilities in order to be able to access the credit card processing for this organization. I contacted the company that was the victim. It was actually the credit card processor. They were based in Florida for this major hotel chain. It was they weren't the only victim. They processed credit card transactions for other organizations as well. The owners of the company denied what I presented. They said, "Oh, we aren't a victim." And I had millions of credit card numbers. I had all of the network schema. I had the username and password for the network administrator. They did not want to have anything to do with me. And they literally attempted to sell the company to a financial institution before disclosing to anyone that the breach had occurred. Again, this was 2004. Can you imagine, right? Oh my goodness. Their lack of preparation just is a great demonstration of how badly things can go if you don't recognize security and the proper protections in order to be able to have a proper response to an incident. Their poor detection and response capabilities led to significant losses and unknown number of credit card victims across the world, really. So I just share that as an example of how bad incident response can go in an organization and how important your role as security practitioners are in being your organization's voice to say, yes, we need to recognize when an incident occurs and respond to that incident. So we're going to switch gears some and talk about what you really should do. Fortunately, I was able to take take all of the information that came from that that computer in Cyprus and detail for the, it was actually, the subject was in Erfstadt, Germany, and detail for the Bundeskriminalamt, everything they needed in order to be able to conduct a search warrant on the subject in Erfstadt and have him arrested for the crimes that he had conducted. That being said, in order to properly prepare for an incident, every organization should have clear roles and responsibilities in their incident response plan on what everyone's role should be in an incident, because an incident is much different than regular operations. Some people believe, hey, we're just going to continue doing things the way they should be done. That is not how incident management should go. Everyone needs to have their defined roles and responsibilities and recognize that it's not business as usual. Need to develop incident detection and analysis capabilities. Have a comprehensive strategy for response, understand how to contain and mitigate those attacks that occur, and then, as Chris talked about, regularly review and test your plans to make sure that they are functioning properly. This was a case that my friend Karen Trimmer with DTI years and years ago helped me. She, at the time, was responsible for investigations at JP Morgan Chase. And I was 3 years into tracking the origins of Eastern European organized cybercrime. As an investigator in San Francisco, I had a wealth of contacts in the high technology community. Visa was headquartered there in Foster City, California. And an investigator from Visa came to me and said, Greg, do you know a subject by the name of BOA? And this subject used this screen identity of BOA. I don't know if he used that to represent the Bank of America or the snake, but this subject was a major organized crime figure out of Ukraine. And he had been arrested in the United States prior in the late 90s and actually fled the country. I had been intercepting communications about BOA and his Eastern European organized crime roots for some time. And they said, we've got a big arrest in Cyprus. We need you to figure out what's going on here. And in this particular case, this was before that the case that I just talked about relative to Erfstadt, Germany. We responded to Cyprus, and this guy, his name was Roman Vega. He had stolen 8.7 million credit card numbers from a merchant processor in Omaha, Nebraska. The company saw that the hack was going on. They couldn't stop it at that time. This was early 2003. They actually had to pull the plug out of the wall to stop the credit card numbers from flowing out to the suspect. From his computer, I was able to recover 8.7 million credit card numbers, and we he received 20 years in jail. I was able to extradite him to the United States. A couple important points there. Incident detection. Data Processing Incorporated in Omaha saw that the intrusion, and they understood that they needed to report that to law enforcement. They did the best they could. They literally pulled the plug out of the network, out of the wall, in order to be able to stop the hack. They worked with local law enforcement in order to be able to collect and preserve the evidence. That was super helpful for us on the other side as we got the computers from the subject and collaborated that evidence. Working with law enforcement both domestically and internationally is really important. And Solomon talked about how the Department of Justice for Delaware is here. Having those relationships with law enforcement officers is extremely important in a time of stress. And law enforcement officers, state of Delaware, FBI, Secret Service, they all have the ability to extradite subjects that are responsible for the schemes that we're talking about. These people are people, right? We talk about cyber threats as something that, we don't see. They're on the other side of the world. These are people. Every attack from a cyber perspective is a person. And so I think that's extremely important to recognize, understand, and think about in the context of being able to protect our infrastructure. Many years later, I was an executive at the Postal Service responsible for global security. At this time, this was mid-2014. And this was some months before the OPM breach had been publicly identified. Postal Service received a notification from CISA, and we were pinging out to command and control infrastructure for the Russian government, or the Chinese government. And they brought me in to lead the response to the investigation. They knew it was bad. And you need to, every cyber incident, you need to have a leader in your organization that takes charge. In this particular case, we used FEMA's ICS infrastructure concept to be the Postal Service's guide for how to lead an organization through an incident. This particular time, I worked quickly, established network forensic capabilities across the U.S. Postal Service network. It's a large network, 1.2 million devices, connects 31,000 retail locations, 66,000 pieces of OT infrastructure. You can only imagine. We identified that the Chinese government had accessed the employee records of the Postal Service. So their motive was the same as the OPM breach. They were after employee data of US government agencies, and they exfiltrated that data. The day in my law enforcement capacity that I briefed the Postmaster General that we'd lost all our data to China, the manager of our information security program, as I was literally leaving that conference room from the briefing, pulls me in an adjoining conference room and says, "Hey, I'm going to announce my retirement immediately." That was the day I turned from being the hunter to being the hunted. And for the next 6 years, I was the Chief Information Security Officer for the U.S. Postal Service. I want to key on that term resilience. I think, as I mentioned earlier, our job as practitioners are to make sure that our organizations are resilient to these kinds of attacks. And all of these preparations that we make from a response perspective are designed to be able to get mitigations in place and operations back up and running so that for the U.S. Postal Service, we could deliver to every day to 160 million addresses across the United States so that mail ends up in your mailbox every day. And for your organizations, your mission is the most important. And so I just want to emphasize that specific leadership capability that you need to have. And it's personal resilience as well as organizational resilience. I talk about preparing to respond. I think there's 3 things that an organization has to have from a focus perspective in incident response, and that is an investigative response. It's extremely important to understand the point of attack and understand why that resource was being attacked. Was it a vulnerability? Was it the crown jewels that your organization holds? What are they trying to do and why are they trying to do it? You need to have a remediation activity, understanding what are the things that we need to do to be able to address that point of attack and get back up to operations as quickly as possible. recovering from backups, how often do you check and make sure that your backups are secure, off network, and make sure that they are able to be recovered in an incident? It's extremely important in ransomware attacks, and I'll give Chris another call out. Their ransomware preparedness with the CSET tool and other things are extremely important for your organizations to go through. And then the consequence management. So this was particularly interesting. At the time, the US government was very concerned about the Chinese threat actor. CISA, it was not called CISA at the time, it was called US CERT. The director of US CERT wanted me, because we had all of the telemetry in place. As a law enforcement officer, I knew how to position the investigative response. We had the best collection on the Chinese actor that had ever been made. And there were other things going on in the US government from a response perspective, as you can imagine, the OPM breach. And they wanted me to keep that actor active in the network. Wow, the leadership of the Postal Service did not want that. This was October into November. The Postal Service at the time was seriously involved in delivering Christmas for America. We would deliver over 100 million packages a year for Christmas. We probably still do that. And they didn't want a nation-state actor in our network. You can imagine, I had to set up a meeting with the Postmaster General, the head of US CERT, and the White House and Congress were very interested in this. Consequence management is important. Do not leave it to your public relations people. It is an important part of your incident response capabilities and needs to be tested in that. Postmaster General won. She got, he got the network remediated. We did remediation over the November holiday weekend, Veterans Day, and we got the actor ejected. So I just emphasize, are you prepared in your incident response capabilities to investigate the situation, remediate, and deal with all of the consequences that a breach can occur for your organization? After an incident, it's extremely important to conduct a full post-attack recovery mission. Looking at root cause analysis, 5 whys. Why did this actor want access to our network? Why was our network vulnerable? How was this data structure accessible? Looking at not only the technical aspects, but the effectiveness of your incident response capabilities. Developing comprehensive recommendations for improvement. We spent, over the next couple of years, I spent hundreds of millions of dollars to improve. I inherited an information security capability. So the Postal Service size, 650,000 employees, $72 billion in annual revenue, 31,000 retail locations serving 160 million delivery addresses a day. I inherited a team of 20 people with a $10 million a year budget. Wow, that was seriously insufficient. So that was clearly part of my after action, was increasing our headcount, our capabilities, our technology. Ultimately, the organization got to about 450 cybersecurity professionals supporting the organization, and I saw Deloitte out there. They were one of my major providers, as well as Raytheon and Booz Allen. I want to talk about one last thing that scares me. And it scares me because corporate culture in the United States is not prepared for this. HR organizations do a pretty good job from a pre-hire perspective for candidates. I do a lot of cyber incident response, and I was called in to help an organization, a critical infrastructure organization that provides services for 400 critical infrastructure companies across the US. And they had hired, during COVID, a Chinese national. He had gone to a technical institute in China, came to the United States, and got his master's degree from a prestigious college focused on cybersecurity. He was a very trusted employee, had worked for the company for a couple of years before this particular situation occurred. However, it was all remote, and they were a cameras off company, so he rarely was ever seen on camera from a Zoom perspective, and they'd only met him twice in person. And I was called in to respond to this organization because they'd had an incident, and their CISO had left unexpectedly. And I said, one of the first things we need to do is we need to understand where are all of our employees logging in from? And it took about 10 days after I first arrived for that capability. We had Okta, we had all the data, we just never instrumented it from a response perspective to know where they were, where all the employees were logging in from. And so we get this login from Russia. And I'm like, why do we have anybody logging into our corporate network from Russia? And the employee's supervisor actually, by the time, before it got bubbled up to me, I said, you know, the employee supervisor actually attempted to get approval for his employee. Oh, he's in Russia. You know, let's just get his, you know, let's give him approval to work from there. So, unfortunately, that was the manager of the cybersecurity engineering organization that had just started to report to me. And I was like, the Russia war has just begun. This is an important, the subject was literally logging in from an important location for the Russian government to attack, geolocation to attack Ukraine. And I was like, no, we are not going to let this subject log in. This guy was responsible for the Observe IT installation for the organization. You guys know what that is? So there's software that is used to monitor for insider threats. He was actually the dude that was the administrator for the insider threat monitoring program of the organization. Perfect, right? Believe it or not. So, needless to say, I immediately, they had not done any social media examination on this guy. And so I took his employment application, searched the dark web for his email addresses, and I came up with a Twitter account. He was posting a bunch of pro-Russia propaganda via Twitter, right? Oh my goodness. This guy had been a cybersecurity engineer for this critical infrastructure component. This guy could have taken out, oh my God. Obviously, we got with the FBI immediately, got all of his information to them. Hopefully they've taken care of that situation. But could this happen in your organization? do you have proper insider threat monitoring and management capabilities for your organizations? From my experiences, I think corporate culture in the United States is not prepared for that, and it's definitely something that, from a threat perspective, we need to go back to that first slide that I showed for Chris Ray. And we need to understand how these actors are operating in our organizations. So with that, I wanted to just share, I've written a book with my colleague on the 6 steps to mastering threat intelligence. If you'd like to hit that and provide some feedback about the presentation and its usefulness, love to have you give me some feedback there and get a free copy of that book. And if you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn is available. I don't know if I've got any time for questions. I probably am over, but okay, take a couple of questions. Solomon says I can answer a couple questions.
Down there on the right?
Yes.
Thank you. Such a wonderful insight. You talked about resilience, right?
Yes.
And
Excellent question. So the question is, a lot of focus on security in organizations. How do you as an organization think about, or how should you think about more broad focus on resilience? It starts with leadership. One of the things that I built in the Postal Service and I bring to organizations is having a cyber risk or just a risk management function within the leadership team. Getting buy-in from executives across the organization, CFO. Understanding for the CFO, business email compromise is a threat vector, right? COO, understanding that ransomware can take out operations and have an impact. Being able to communicate across that C-level and setting up a risk management capability for an organization is extremely important. So I refer to it as an cyber executive risk committee. Other organizations might just call it the risk committee, but that's the most important function that you should create in order to be able to see across all of the multiple facets that an organization has to help that organization build resilience for all the business processes that it has. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you very much.